Welcome to Thriller Bitcoin. Welcome to Thriller Bitcoin.
So, Nostr November a success?
Oh my God. Yeah, it was crazy. I didn't know what to expect, but yeah, there was a lot of stuff that was happening. I actually kind of forget everything that happened, but it was fun. It was just fun to, yeah, it was fun just to, see how it all played out and just like, after a while, it just felt like I didn't really need to use Twitter. It's a lot of the stuff that was happening at the time on Twitter was just like, just kind of hectic anyway. So it was cool just to, just building, hanging out with the builders. So.
Yeah, it was interesting too, because at that time, Twitter was going through like this decline, like big time. And then the whole Elon thing came in, and then I felt like now it's steady now. Like, but at that time, I felt like Twitter was just going downhill fast. And like Nostr November came at the right time.
Yeah, I mean, this was like, I heard about this is what people were talking about, but I had no idea because I wasn't like paying attention. I just heard there was like some ruckus going on. So I still don't really know what was going on at the time, but.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting is like here at Pleb Lab, we have all these people super excited about Nostr. Like we have Topher here. He's working on some stuff with Nostr, Super Testnet. And then I see what you've been doing with Damas and how it's grown since you announced it. I want to say it was like back in was it September or August?
I feel like around August. Yeah, is when I started looking into this.
What was the original idea? Was it just to create a Twitter client? I feel like wasn't it, right? Like what was the original?
Well, I just love playing with new technologies. I've always, that's kind of what got me into Bitcoin, because I actually do nothing about like money or, all the kind of a lot of people get into certain things in different directions. Like a lot of people get into Bitcoin because they see the value in terms of the money angle, and maybe they're not technical. I've always got on just because like I just think it's like technically interesting. This idea of having like this completely decentralized network that's simple and I could actually build a client in an afternoon. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try to build a client because let's see how this works in practice. And this is just how it started. And then and I was using iPhone at the time. I'm slowly moving away from my iPhone, but it's like, okay, well, I want to be able to use this on my phone, like my Twitter app. So I might as well learn how to. At that point, I haven't even written an iPhone app before.
Really?
My other small one.
Wow.
So I'm like, well, it'll be a good opportunity to learn two things, which is like this new protocol. And I was also doing some like iOS app stuff at work because I was supposed to learn it. So I was like, okay, I'll just use this as an opportunity to learn all this stuff. And I was just like blown away by how simple and easy it was to build on top of Nostr. And I think at that point, I'm like, this could be the thing that actually decentralizes the social web. And I got really excited at that point. So
yeah, when Super had his workshop here, to this day it still has the most views, and I think even this Blue Sky team was looking at it too, and they had reached out to him personally, and yeah, because I remember him distinctly telling me like Nostr is just a communications protocol. Is that the easiest way to understand it? Like if Bitcoin's the payments protocol, Nostr could be the communications protocol in the stack.
The way that I like to think about it is just imagine if we had. Imagine if we didn't have the email protocol and we had to rely on like one company to deliver mail, and they could censor like the mail getting sent to and from users. Like that's kind of what we have with Twitter, right?
Yeah.
So I see Nostr as like the email protocol for social, and so you could use that as a communications layer for other things. You can, the cool thing about a protocol is now you can start to integrate it with other protocols in the same way that people are integrating protocols in email. I don't know if people are doing that anymore, but you could in theory, because it's like this open, because all the protocol, this is something my partner always gives me hell about. She's like, oh, you're talking about the protocols again. Like what the hell is a protocol? So I don't know. I guess like the audience is pretty technical, but I always like to like try to explain like, hey, like all a protocol is just a way for two computers to talk to each other. It's just a language for computers. And it's really as simple as that. And once you have languages that computers can talk and speak, then you can start building programs that like talk to each other. And that's powerful because it's not one, like you can't control language, right? You can't control speech. And the minute you have a protocol and a language for computers to talk to each other, now you have interoperability between services, and so it brings a lot of like freedom to the cyberspace.
It's interesting too, because I know you've been exploring the whole like protoverse thing or the metaverse. I think you call it the protoverse. And
that's my
dude. What is that proposal? What is that? Yeah, what is that?
Again, it's just one of these ideas where it's like, hey, like I like the idea of the metaverse. Like I read Ready Player One. I like, as much as dystopic as it can be, and it's probably not good for society. I probably shouldn't be working on it. But I grew up playing World of Warcraft, so I love the idea of being in a virtual world, of hanging out with other people. Especially as like when I was a younger kid, I never had a lot of friends, so I spent all my time in like World of Warcraft, and that's where all my friends were. So I really saw the power of having like a virtual world or a virtual space that you can just kind of hang out with your friends. I probably won't do that much anymore, but like, yeah, I remember as a kid that was really a valuable idea. So I'm like, hey, what happened? But a lot of these times, these metaverses like World of Warcraft, they're like a single corporation. They control the code, they control the virtual space. They limit what you can do. So I'm like, okay, what would happen if we try to build a virtual or like a protocol for like a virtual, basically a space in cyberspace that you can actually go to and interact with things, and it's not controlled by a single corporation or a single game engine or something like that. So I just started thinking about like ways you could do it, and that's what Protoverse is. It was just one idea that I came up with, but I haven't been working on it recently because it seems like I have so many other things going on. But I still like the that idea.
Yeah, because then you could start using all these open protocols, right? To build out this protoverse or of a sort.
Oh yeah, you can start interacting with other protocols. Like you could feed Nostra into the metaverse. You could feed Lightning into the metaverse, right? The many of it as a protocol, it's just like a library that you can import into your open source solution. So I really like that idea. And the way that I designed Protoverse was that you could render the space in any way you want. So there's like a high level description of the scene. So it might say something like, okay, well, there's a table here, there's a door there. It's just like a text description, but it allows you to drill down. So there's like, okay, now that if I have a client that wants to render it in 3D, it's like, oh, you can now get more information about that table. Like, what does it look like, right? So at the very high level, you have the high level description, but you can actually drill down and build a 3D rendering of the room, but you don't need to. So if you wanted to connect with like an IRC client and just like get it to tell you what the room looks like, so people who are blind might not have really good facilities because you want this to be inclusive. It's kind of like the web was originally meant to be inclusive, where you can still interact with it. I mean, I feel like accessibility has really decreased over time, but in the original idea of the web is that everyone should be able to be involved in this space, right? And you can't really do that in any like metaverse protocol that exists right now, like VR chat, because if you're blind, like how do I interact with that? So again, so Protoverse was another angle of like, hey, how do I bring accessibility to the metaverse? Because we want like if all the economic activity is happening in the space, you'd want everyone to be involved. You don't want to exclude anyone. So anyway, yeah, I mean, it's just one of these side projects maybe I'll never get to, but
yeah, I think that's definitely one worth pursuing at some point. Maybe Damus turns into something like that, can help it or at least like grow it.
Yeah, I would love to see Nostra integrated into like the Protoverse and get messages in your space and stuff. So I don't know, maybe one day.
Yeah, dude, that dream that you just described is like, I think we all kind of know that's where it's headed. Or at least that's what I feel like when I think of like the web and the future of the internet. Like they always had this thing, right? Where they were like, oh, the internet of things. But what does that even really mean? Right? Like,
yeah, there's a lot of like buzzwords and things like that. But if we just look back at how like the internet was started, it was built on these ideas of protocols, like the SMT protocol, like Gopher, and like all these early protocols were just trying to build like decentralized systems. And then sometimes around like, I think like 2000, mid 2000s, it's just like, you saw this take off. You saw these apps take off, like Gmail and like YouTube, and it was like the great centralization of the internet, which is I think is a temporary thing, just because the internet was so new and it was such like a splash that people were like just like they didn't know what's going on. There's all this activity is all of a sudden appear in cyberspace, and then they're not going to think about the implications of just putting all of your eggs on this one centralized server because it's just easy to do, easy to use. But now we're starting to see the negative effects of just, putting all your eggs in one basket. Like on Twitter, it's like now, okay, well, they have too much power to censor your speech. And like, okay, well, like, let's take a step back. Let's go back to like our founding ideals of the internet, and let's see if we can redesign these systems that, makes it more like free for people using it and like reduces the amount of lock-in on platforms. So I think we're starting to see that. It's euphemistically called like Web3 and like the shitcoin crypto space, but it really it's just like re-centralization of the web. It's just like trying to bring it back to its original idea. So.
Yeah, it really gets me thinking to kind of like the ethos that we have here is like it reminds me of like if we actually build out this internet money, right, and it's all on Lightning and like these Bitcoin payment rails, like if that really is the world that we see, then it comes down to like, why do you need these middlemen of like, a centralization everywhere, right? You really don't need that. If anything, it harkens back to like community, like online communities. Right. But with that community, the community wants to be able to go anywhere it wants. Kind of what you described earlier is like, you want to do World of Warcraft, but you also maybe, I don't know, you want to do like The Sims or whatever, but you want to be able to go back between those communities. And something like Nostr and what you're describing with the Protoverse could facilitate that, I think.
Yeah, I feel like that was something that was very true in the early internet. You had these small communities, and it was just like there wasn't like any large corporations that are trying to like shove ads down your throat. It was just like human beings interacting with each other in this virtual space. And I feel like we've kind of lost that. If you go on Google and just try to search for anything, it's just like literally just corporatized results that aren't that interesting. And there's actually people working on other search engines. I forget the name of it.
Realsearch.cc. Yeah.
There's that one. And then there's one that just tries to give you like old school HTML pages, like those one you would find on like Tripod
really?
and stuff.
Where's that at?
So like, I'm going to
oh man, really?
I remember it.
That sounds so cool.
Maybe we can link it. I don't know if there's like show notes or something, but I'll remember it.
Yeah. Let me know. I want to see that. That's cool.
But it just shows that like how much Google is just like completely changing people's like psyche in some sense. I don't know. It's not good. I think Google is one of the most harmful things for the internet, I think, just in terms of what they're doing, in terms of like how they push people into certain areas that aren't really like what the internet's all about. Anyway, no, at least that not a lot of people who were on the internet in the early days. I mean, I was in probably a unique point in my life because like I was born in 1988 and I experienced the world without internet. And then I was just coming onto the internet in some sense. I always say like the internet raised me because like I taught myself everything on the internet. My parents were like, what the hell are you doing on that computer all the time? It's like, well, I'm like absorbing all this new like cyberspace of information. And it was a very transformative experience for me. So, and I remember the early days of like what it was like to be in those small communities and to be able to interact with people in like a real way, in a genuine way, versus just like this corporatized way that we see now. So anything I do to get back to that world, I'm happy to work on projects.
Yeah. I always think of, like the only person I can really talk about that here is like Keon. Me and Keon roughly around the same age, so we always talk. I remember when like getting on America Online and like that whole like I remember IRC, but I remember also like the first like web, like when Yahoo was launched and when like Google. I remember seeing all that. And I remember being here in Austin, like what used to be where people would come and launch, startups and like it was the place to be for South by and stuff. And that's all gone. But I do think like now when I look at kind of what I see in the landscape is like that return to what you described, this like this old, or I don't even know if it's old, this form of
authentic or something.
Yeah. It's like what it was supposed to be, but like it's, yeah.
And it's just something that like, I feel like a lot of people just, it's easy to glaze over and it's easy to miss if you didn't, grow up in that space. Right. So a lot of people just think the internet is like these like apps that they use on their iPhone, like TikTok.
Yeah.
They think that this is the internet, but like there's actually something much more important, I think, underneath it, which is like connecting people and connecting devices in a freedom preserving way. And I feel like I truly believe that Bitcoin actually started all of this. Started getting people thinking about it again, right? So it's like, oh wait, having centralized entities control our money is actually really bad. And like how, and this whole centralization aspect, like how is it affecting other things like speech, right? So how do we decentralize speech? And so I think Bitcoin started to get protocols into people's heads again. Cool.
You know what's also interesting? I'm seeing that kind of same kind of like grass movement with Nostr though. Like we'll be here late at night, like working on some Nostr stuff, but like even myself, I can't participate in like coding and all that stuff, but I can participate by writing about it and by talking about it and like getting it out there to the masses. And even I find it infectious, like what's going on in the Nostr world. Like open protocols can do that. They can inspire, right? It's kind of cool.
It's cool to see because it seems somewhat trivial. It's just like we're sending JSON messages to servers over WebSockets, and we're just like being blown away. It's like, it's in some sense it shouldn't be that cool, but in some sense it is that cool because we've been missing this, everything we've been using, and in some sense the simplicity is what's beautiful about it, is because anyone can just, if you are like a programmer, if you want to get into programming, it's very easy to write a client and just to get on board and just to start hooking Nostr into all your like devices and all your different applications. So it's exciting that you can actually now we have a way to like communicate between apps in a way that's not super complicated. Like a lot of these other solutions like peer-to-peer is like, well, you make sure your peer's online. If you send a message, like how do I retrieve the message again? How do I retrieve our messages back and forth? Okay, maybe I have to store all those messages on my client. But what if like my client goes away? Then okay, I'll lose those messages. So there's a lot of complications with these peer-to-peer solutions. They don't really they try to hide that, or they don't really acknowledge it up front. And I think that's kind of anyway. So I feel like Nostra really solves a lot of those issues where it's just like, okay, now we can just store these messages on a centralized relay, like which is convenient. But we also have other relays that we can also send them to at the same time, and therefore, we get that decentralization property, which is good. So
yeah, and it's also too, to go back to your point about the whole Bitcoin kind of started this thing. And one thing that I think about now, like 10 years into it, or however many years we're into it now, it really now I think most people understand what a public and private key is. Like you could probably go to the average like person, maybe not the average person on the street, but the average internet user on the street, and ask them like, what's a private key? What's a public key? And they could probably give you a rough definition. And when I think about what Nostr is, it's that simplicity, but maybe Bitcoin had to be born first because it really got cryptography out there to the masses, or at least it taught us something about cryptography.
And Nostr, like in some sense, relies on the cryptography of Bitcoin because it's literally using the same library used in Bitcoin keys. So in some sense, Nostr wouldn't be here without Bitcoin. So
it's fascinating. Gosh, dang! Thinking about like where Nostr could be here in the next, even 18 months from now. Like you even see it with like once Lightning took off, right? Like once now you have like all these projects getting created just from Lightning, and I could see the same thing happening with Nostr. I saw what Fiat Joff and what you retweeted about the whole microservices.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting because so there's a lot of different like message types on the network. You don't have like you don't have just like a tweet, right? So the tweet is like one particular kind of messages, but there can be other messages such as like, your profile, your contact list, anything you want. Like you can make your own message type and use that for your own application if you want. So it just makes a lot more sense that, one macro app, or I guess I'm calling it, wouldn't like, that's what I'm trying to do with my clients right now. Okay. Like the Damas client, it'll handle like the chat, it'll handle text messages, it'll try to handle updating your profile. And then it slowly gets really, really complicated if you want to start handling more and more message types. So at some point it makes sense to just like, okay, you have one very specific app for handling like just, DMs, right? So this would be like the Signal like app. And so these were just like the micro apps versus the macro apps. Or you have one, I saw one, someone put up a website the other day that just allows you to edit your profile. Because like this is the number one thing that people come in to me in Damas because I'm lazy and I haven't implemented like profile editing in Damas yet. And they're like, why can't I edit my profile? So it's like, now I could just point them to this website. Like, okay, you just edit your profile on this website. And they're like, what? It's kind of confusing for people because it's like, they're used to having this one app do everything for them. But, this is like a decentralized network. So we can start to build more specialized tools that you can point people to that are probably better at doing the thing that than for me to do it in my app. But, anyway, so I think that's pretty cool.
No, you're right. I kind of see this trend too right now, right? Like I was talking to Carvalho last week, and we were talking about this widgets thing, and he was saying the exact same thing. Like he was saying, like there's no reason why my app should have control over everything that you're interested in. There should just be these micro, kind of like he called them widgets, but it could be micro, whatever, micro apps that just all talk to each. Like there should be like a Stacker news feed, and maybe there's a thing that tells you how much your balance is, and like all these little. He had Ellen Markets thing that he had in there too. So I think this is kind of the thing that maybe everybody's seeing behind the scenes. Maybe I don't know this trend.
Yeah, I mean, this I like the idea of a widget. That's a good name for it. Because I eventually going to have like Lightning payments in the Nostr network as like messages, right? Because I want to be able to tally tips and stuff within the app. So, you could just have a widget app that just tallies all your donations that you got over Nostra, and that could just be its own little app, right? And all that app would do is just query for that particular message type and add up all the numbers. So, so it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does. Gosh, I saw what you did with the chat OpenAI bot. Can you just for a baseline, what is this chat bot and like OpenAI? Just like a rough little thing.
Yeah, so OpenAI released this. They call it a large language model. It's called GPT. I'm actually not sure what it stands for. I probably should know that. So this was like a big deal. I think they released this actually a while ago, at least the original version, and it was just really good at like writing stuff. Right, it's really good at language comprehension, and if you ask it a question, it can give you a pretty good answer. So this was called GPT-3. They recently upgraded it to be slightly better, and so it's now technically called GPT 3.5. But recently, I think November or something, they released Chat GPT, which was like absolutely mind blowing. So this is like it's a fine tuned version of GPT-3, which is much better at questions and answers, and it's much less bullshitty. So if you point something out on Chat GPT and I'm pretty sure that's wrong, he's like, oh yeah, it'll be like, oh yeah, you're right. Here's why it's wrong. So it's much better at self correcting. It's much more useful because of that. It's much more useful for programming. I use it to build like a space time simulation of like the space time deformation around a star, and just like
really?
I don't know how to do that, but like I just got ChatGPT to actually do all the programming. I just said, okay, I need to do this. Like, where would I start? And it says, okay, he's like, here's how you do it. Here's step 1, step 2, step 3. I'm like, okay, let's start at step 1. And it's like, okay, step 1. Okay, you'll need to do this. I'm like, okay, can you show me what that would look like in Python? And it's like, yep, here's what the code looks like. I'm like, great. So it basically was able to code it step by step, just by me asking it questions, which was like absolutely mind blowing. I'm still kind of
that's really, man, to think that that was that easy.
So going back to the chatbot, the chatbot isn't ChatGPT, and I'm going to upgrade the bot to ChatGPT once it's actually available as an API, because it's going to be even better. So I'm just using like the
it's already good.
I know, that's the scary part, right? Like, we just wait until it's actually not as bullshit. Because right now it bullshits a lot, right? But the ChatGPT it doesn't bullshit as much, which is really useful.
It's funny because when I see it on Damus, like it talks like a person. Like it.
Yeah.
Did you do something when you were
okay? So
I mean, you don't have to give away anything, but like it would be cool to know like how that.
So I experimented with a lot of like prompts. So there's things you can do before you give it to the AI, which is like, okay, pretend you're a human and try to act like this. But whenever I gave it those prompts, it would just like be way too cringe. I don't know why. It would just like try way too hard to seem like a human. Like one was just like, one prompt I gave was like, just be super rude. And it was just like, it actually just was like not fun to talk to because it was just so rude and sarcastic. It's funny. I do plan on making a version of the bot that is like that. And then the only issue right now is that, sorry, I have my server logs open right now because like a lot of people are hitting Damus because Jack Dorsey just tweeted about it. So I just saw an error, but okay, it's fine. Okay, what was I talking about? Okay, ChatGPT. I was gonna make this like 2 versions of the bot. One was like an evil version, and one's like a nice version. I'll have them battle each other. But I realized right now, if I were to do that, it would create an infinite loop, and it would just talk back and forth forever, and then it would cost a lot of money. So I'm gonna not do that yet, but I do plan on having different versions of the bot on the site. So yeah, you can customize it. If you actually go and talk to the bot right now and say, "Hey, start speaking to me like an Australian," and it'll do it. Like, it'll have you can kind of customize this personality based off the thread you start. So.
Yeah, like out of all the stuff I've seen, like you've seen the prompts and everybody posts on like what they've experienced talking to the bot, but yours is the only one that I've seen so far, like in the real world, or it's actually being used and it's actually working, and it's fascinating to like look and read at, like, but it sparks like the possibilities. Like
what's unique about this particular implementation is that I actually prefix everyone's post, so I actually put the username in the prompt, so that like anyone can join the conversation, right? Like if typically the way people have been using GPT-3 is like they just go to OpenAI's like UI and they type in a text box and they're just usually experimenting it with like one-on-one. But this like brings the AI into a social network that like and you can jump in the conversation and it can remember like things it said to previous people in the conversation based off the prompt. And it just makes it way more interesting, I think. And it started making me think like, what else can you do with it? Because like this is very simple. I'm building a prompt based off the users, based off the thread. And each thread is basically its own AI. And it's very simple, but it's very powerful. I'm like, wow. I'm like, what's the next iteration going to be like?
Yeah.
Probably, I don't know.
Yeah, it makes you rethink like what is a social network kind of like if let's say hypothetically I want to make a car bot and like it just give it my personality and then people think it's me, you know?
Yeah, you can because like no one's stopping you from. I mean, eventually maybe the relay will ban you or whatever, but that's fine. You just start your own relay and you can run your own bot of yourself on your relay and get other people to connect to that relay and no one can stop you. So it's kind of cool.
It's kind of cool, dude. So Jack heard about Thomas. How crazy was that? Like, how did that even happen? Was it just because of the post that he posted the other day?
He did a post about like, I didn't read the whole thing, but I think it's something to the gist of like, he wanted to see more solutions in this space. And I guess everyone in the Bitcoin space just like tweeted at him about my project. I was like, oh God.
You're like, there's this guy over there in Canada doing this already.
Yeah. So I was kind of worried because I'm like, Damas is still very alpha prototypey, and to get like a lot of users on board right now would probably be a bad user experience, but that's kind of okay because it's like this new protocol and it's kind of quirky. So I think just the amount of people on Nostra today, I can't even keep. I used to be able to say hello to everyone on the network when they join. I literally can't right now. It's absolutely just blowing up my phone. It's really cool. I just love to see it. So,
dude, yeah, I'm like, look, I remember when it got launched, and I was so excited. I was like, yes, finally, we can take down Twitter. But then when as it started growing, you would respond to everybody. You'd be like, hey, hello, welcome to Nasser, welcome to Damas, and then you would just like keep going. And now at this point, there's just so many people coming on board. You can't say hi to everybody anymore.
I know it kind of makes me sad because it's like. I mean, it's also a big point in the network where it's like, it's growing so fast now. I mean, it might be just a situation where all these people are just coming to check it out real quick because he tweeted about it and they'll probably leave. So these things tend to happen. We see this with Mastodon a lot. People who join this server and leave, but that's fine. At least it's in the consciousness of a lot more people now, which is kind of cool. Yeah,
you get that surge and then it attracts somebody else and then you get that surge and then you have your base community and then that just grows and grows and grows. I saw it similar with like Sacker News. Like you see it just grow over time. And that's, it reminds me very much of that last year. It's just like similar. It's very similar. It's interesting. Yeah,
Stacker News is awesome. I'm impressed. Like that's an awesome site. It's neat. I wish I had an app. I want to use it on my phone.
Dude, your web app looks really good though.
Which one?
It's clean. The Damas web app.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm basically just like rewriting. So this is my second. I've written 2 clients. I've written the Damas and I wrote the Damas web. But now I'm like actually writing a third one.
Really?
This is Damas Android. And basically the goal with this one is to replace all the other ones. So it's going to run on all the platforms. So wow. I'm tired of it's just because it's cutting my attention between the apps too much. And it's just, everyone's like, oh, this is broken on iOS. This is broken on web. I'm like, well, I'd rather just focus on one app that just works on everything. So that's the plan with the next Damas version.
Nice. Have you thought through some of like, because I remember when we were doing Nasser November, there was a time when like it just was getting spammed, right? And we found out who that was, but that's for a story for another day. But what do you see as some of the hiccups or some of the obstacles that we have to like get through on the Nasser side to really get this to scale?
There's some huge things that if people really wanted to abuse the network right now and make it a not fun place, there's a few weak points. So one is the channel spec. So all the channels are public. So like when I say the channel spec, I'm talking about enigma.io. So this is like a relatively new spec, and there's the main issue with it is the fact that anyone can send a message to the channel, right? It's different from the mode of Damas or Bronley or the original Twitter-like clients because you would only really get messages from people you follow. And you can't really get spammed in that context because if you're only pulling messages from your friends, then the only spam you'll ever see is if you open up a thread that's getting spammed. Otherwise, in your timeline, you won't see spam, which is anyway. So when you have a public channel, it's much harder to stop spam. I've been experimenting with a way to fix this because so the weak points are like the places where anyone can send you a message, right? So there's one. The other weak points are like your notifications or in your DMs. So anyone can get into your notifications and DMs. So I've started thinking about this a lot, and I think the best way to deal with it is, you don't incur any cost for your friends. So if your friends want to send you a message, there's no cost. But if a stranger to send you a message, there should be a mode, and there is a mode. It's programmed in Damas Web. I just haven't turned it on, which basically forces them to use proof of work or eventually maybe even just send you money, where with Lightning.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best way to do it, because now you don't force your friends to use proof of work, and you only force it on strangers. So
yeah, I remember when we were first, I was shilling Nostr to everybody around here, around town. And I was talking to Carmen, and Carmen's like, "Oh, you on Nostr?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "You can find me here." And then we downloaded Damus together, and then he signed in and he just sent me a yo. But you're saying that in the way you're seeing it now, would he have to pay me Lightning for that, or how are you, or would it be the same thing?
Yeah. So in that context, you might have went into the Explorer tab, which shows you the global network.
Uh-huh.
That's what it sounds like. What happened, where you just sent yo and you went in and saw that. So, so there's the Explorer tab is interesting to me, or the global view, like sometimes it's called, because it's just like every message on the network, and that probably just won't even really work in the future, just because there'll be so many messages. So in that context, you'd probably just need, use the pub key directly and add him as a friend. There'd be some feature to do that. But yeah, it will be harder to use the global view in the future. Right now, I want to keep it as open as possible. And so one idea I have right now is just to basically, it's by default you'll see every message. But if the client starts to see that there's lots of messages coming in really quickly, then it can dynamically add a POW or a proof of work cost on incoming messages. So there's a lot of dynamic like proof of work ideas that we've been working on that helps fix some of these issues. Dude,
so how is it just you right now that's doing Damus on your own, or do you have other people have contributed, or?
So it's just me on Damus Web. I have a friend who was helping with like the design. So the reason why Damus Web looks so good is because like there's this awesome dude in Vancouver who I used to be actually I hired him at the company I work for. And he's like, hey, I can help improve this. So that was cool. So he helped me out. So that was the only major help I've gotten, was like that one person. I've received a few patches from a few other people on Damus iOS, but nothing too much. Yeah, it's mostly just been all me. So
yeah, that's good, dude. That's good that you got it nice and tight and people are helping out. Like, I'm always trying to push out Damus just to all my friends and everything. So I'm doing my job over here from Austin. Like, it's
thank you.
Yeah.
All the stuff is open source. So cool. If you go to github.com/damus-io and anyway, so that's the GitHub org, and you can contribute and add issues and stuff. So if you wanna contribute, that's the place to go. Yeah.
I want to switch gears for a second. What do you think about what do you think as far as like LND, LDK, and Core Lightning, as far as just Lightning implementations?
I mean, I'm super biased. I love Core Lightning because Rusty, who works on it, is a genius. He's literally the best program I've ever seen in my entire life. And seeing his code and working on the code base is like it's so nice compared to like Bitcoin Core. Bitcoin Core is like really horrible code base. It's like really old, and people don't want to touch it. And but it's really nice working on like a modern code base like C Lightning, and just it's so well designed. Like just like for instance, I have a plugin right now. I think I've probably mentioned this on other podcasts, but I have a plugin on my C Lightning node that whenever I receive a payment, it sends a message to the Nostr network on my private relay. Nice. So I get notifications when I get paid, which is really cool. So Nostr helps me do that. So just being able to like extend your node with additional functionality is incredibly useful. Yeah.
And as far as the other implementations, like how do you, I guess my question is trying to get to like, how do you outweigh the differences, and like where a young developer could come in, and like where would you tell them to start, and why, I guess?
Again, I feel like I'm just super biased because I would say definitely do C Lightning because it's so easy to, but a lot of people don't agree with that. I think Ben Carmen, I don't forget his last name. The Ben,
one of the Bens.
He prefers like getting new people onto LND just because it's like Go code base and it's like easy to use, and you can start using gRPC to like program stuff. So if you're more familiar with Go and like that type of environment, then sure, I think maybe LND is better. If you want like something that's super high performance and you can write plugins for, which you don't necessarily need to touch C code, then I always recommend C Lightning just because it's so much easier to extend. And it has that commando feature, which I've been like going on about.
What's that?
Like, commando? Oh, so commando is a really cool. So it used to be just an external plugin that Rusty made, but now it's built into all Core Lightning nodes, and it allows you to basically call the JSON RPC over the Lightning network itself. so that you can actually control your Lightning node without needing a web server. So this is like a huge thing. And this is what one of my other iOS apps, it's called LN-Link. You basically can control and pay with your node anywhere, and it's like never blocked. So a big issue with like controlling your node remotely is like sometimes you'll need Tor, you'll need a VPN. So some VPNs like WireGuard, it's blocked on the network. So sometimes you'll try to pay for something and then you can't because your VPN doesn't work, or if you're trying to pay for something and you can't because Tor is slow and laggy. So being able to use the Lightning Network itself to like remotely control your node is a really powerful feature that only Core Lightning has. So I really like that. So if you actually go to my website, jb55.com, you'll see a little, almost like a tally coin like fundraising thing. But the code in your browser actually connects directly to my Lightning node. There's no web server.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a really powerful way to build like widgets for your Lightning node.
And do you ever explore any of the other implementations? Or do you just focus on the C Lightning or Core Lightning?
Yeah, I've been running a Core Lightning node since like 2018. I think I was one of the first like 10 nodes on the network, and I'm just like, it's been so reliable. I'm just like, I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Else.
Yeah.
So that
makes sense.
I'm just gonna I just try to focus my energy onto like one implementation and try to, because it's historically been not as popular like in this like in terms of like dev support and stuff. So just being able to like help on that side is also
yeah, that's cool. Good, so. Yeah. I think what I've seen is kind of exactly what you've said. I think when some of the developers inside of Pleb when they first come in, it's like L&D is like the thing that I keep hearing. I'm not a coder myself or anything like that, but I do pay attention to what's going on. And then like as you get further ingrained, a year or whatever, you can start hearing them talk more about Core Lightning. And now I've just been hearing a lot of talk about LDK and stuff like that. So,
yeah, there's the LDK, which is something else, which is its own. Because it is in some sense a node implementation, but it's not, because it's more like a box of Legos of things you can piece together. So it's much more flexible than a node, and you can actually integrate it into more things. So I've been looking at it and like, how can I use? I'm actually planning on taking a lot of the code out of LDK and using it in one of my apps. So it is very useful as like a toolbox type Lightning node thing.
Nice. Yeah. So like, man, dude, it's crazy to see you from afar, because it's fascinating. Like all the things that you're doing, like from afar, just like, and I don't know you, like this is the first time I'm ever meeting you, but it's fascinating to be inspired from somebody from afar, if that makes sense. Cause like I see all the stuff you're working on. I see how it's just like the proof of work that you talk about, like when you're building Damus and some of these other projects. And I don't know if you're working on any of the NIPs, but like yeah, dude, I was telling the people this morning, like, yeah, I'm going to have William on. We'll see how it goes. And they're like, what? Like they were all like super excited. Like it was, dude, you got a following out there, man.
Like, I'm like, I still don't really understand, because like I've always kind of done this stuff, but it's never, I just feel like protocols were never in fashion until recently.
Oh, is
so
that what it is?
I'm just doing what I've always done, because I've always been like a protocol nerd and building like reverse engineering things. But for some reason, yeah, like people are just really interested in the stuff now, which is really cool. So I'm just happy people are interested in as much as I'm interested in. I really just try to like put out everything I'm working on. I very much like working out in the open and just like, hey, look at all the cool shit I'm building. Like, this is cool. We should get excited about this. So it's cool that it's actually having impact. It's just weird to me. I don't know.
Yeah. No, it definitely has impact, and it's definitely inspiring. And
actually, one of the main reasons I came on this podcast is I remember you did an article talking about Nostra, and I'm like, if people are going to be like, I think you were one of the first people to do that, actually.
Oh, yeah, I think I was.
Yeah, so like, you gotta help these people out. Like they're helping you out, right? So I love to be here just because like, you saw something special in the Nostra network, and that's cool and that's unique. So
yeah, it's just like, it's listening to the devs, like it's listening to the people that are building it and seeing their face light up when they work on Nostra and stuff. And for me, it's like, more of like a media marketing kind of guy and branding and stuff. And like, I was like, well, where can I help out? Like, and it was like, oh yeah, I have this publication that gets out to the masses. I'm worldly now, but like, it's like, let me write about it and get more people there. And like, at least when people start Google searching and doing all these other things, there'll at least be like a baseline to at least get that information out there. And so I just feel like it's doing my part for the protocol, if anything.
And that's probably like one of the most important parts, just because, education has always been like the hardest thing in the space. Cause like these things are very technical and very like, why do we want to do it this way? It's like, actually, well, it's kind of hard to explain unless you really get into the weeds and like, here are the trade-offs between these different solutions. But, being able to communicate this stuff to the public it's like so important for its adoption. So
yeah, I also feel too, I'm very lucky and very blessed because I literally just get to walk down there and say, hey guys, I'm writing this article on, can you help me explain this? And then I can kind of translate that, I guess, to like regular people to understand. I don't know where I got that from, or I think it's just the years of me doing it. But yeah, it just kind of goes back to like, I'm just lucky that I get to be around these people and I get to call on my friends. So it just, it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say like one more thing. Just like, actually, I forgot what I was going to say. So just go ahead.
No, I was also going to ask you, like, so let's say hypothetically, like, like Damus starts taking off, right? Let's just dream for a little bit, William. Let's just say hypothetically Damus starts taking off. When are you thinking about the lightning tips? Like when do you think that phase of Damus will take place? Do you think it's going to be next year at some point that you're going to?
So I want to do it right. And I realized halfway through, because I actually pretty much had something working, but I realized I just wasn't really happy with it because it required too many things. Like the whole point of Nostra is that it should be like, easy to get in and you shouldn't have to run any infrastructure. So like my original solution was, okay, you would have like a C Lightning plugin. And again, that's already restricting to C Lightning, so it wouldn't have worked that well. So whenever your node received a payment, maybe your node would, confirm the payment and send a node to the network. And that would be like, one way of representing a tip. But then it's like, well, you need to run a node and like, that's not really inclusive. So I think I have a better way of doing it, but it requires Bolt 12.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so Bolt 12 has this really cool feature that allows you to create a pair of signatures. And this happens at invoice creation. So the way that it works is you would generate you'd probably just use your Nostra key and you would or your Nostra pub key. And then during your invoice, when you're asking for an invoice over Bolt 12, it actually would encode that in the invoice, so your pub key, your Nostra pub key, so that when the pre-image is revealed, once you eventually pay, you'll also see that it's signed by this key. So you can prove that a Nostra user actually paid the corresponding, because right now, if you reveal a pre-image on the network, you don't really know if that person actually paid. You don't know really the provenance information of who actually paid it. But with Bolt 12, you can actually do that. And that proof will be a bearer proof on the Nostra node. So when you broadcast that proof to the network, you're like, okay, this Nostra key actually paid this invoice, and here's the pre-image. And I think that is what I would need to have Lightning payments on Nostra. And I'm just waiting for Bolt 12 to
so you've been like thinking through like these, like I guess you've been kind of working yourself back. Okay, well, if we do this, then how do we like all these little obstacles that come in the way and the friction. So you've been thinking through it and it seems like you cracked it of a sort.
Yeah, I think this is the right way to do lightning tips. Because like there's other ways you can do lightning tips that are just dumber. Like for instance, I could just like, hey, I definitely paid for this, and I can just broadcast a note. This is how like likes work on Nostra right now. So likes are kind of crappy because anyone can create like thousands of likes. You can create like hundreds of accounts and just spam likes on. So the likes are completely meaningless. So I wanted to have a lightning tip note that was actually not meaningless. Like you can't fake it, right? So it's gonna be really lame. It's like, oh, look, my post is so awesome because I got like a 1 Bitcoin tip. But it's like, actually, no, it's because all the notes were just forged. And, you weren't actually tipped that much. But if we have bearer proofs that it was actually paid based off the pub key, then you wouldn't have to worry about that issue. And I think I want to do it right. I don't know. So I've just been waiting.
No, that makes a lot more sense. So I guess my follow-up question would be, let's say hypothetically I'm using it and I tip you. When I hit that lightning bolt on, or that heart or whatever it's going to be, does a Bolt 12 address come up, or does it just pull from my existing balance that I already have? Because I think Enigma tried doing this as well, where they had like a LN bits instance inside of the app of a sort, and then it would just pull. Or no, you could just pay. I remember. Yeah, you could just pay. You couldn't like tip or anything like that. So, yeah,
there's a lot more details. Like, so I do support the Enigma tip jar thing. So basically, all that is like a small field on your profile that it's just an LN URL. So if you have that field on your account and you go to a user in Damus, you'll actually see a little lightning bolt thing, and you click it, and you can actually tip them directly. So it's completely decentralized, and it's really cool. So So that's good and that's fine, but I really want to have that like lightning tip experience where actually notes are sent out on payment. So the how you would do that is interesting. So imagine you might have this situation where, okay, maybe you'd use that LN URL, but now we're talking about Bolt 12, right? So maybe you would have to have a Bolt 12 address. So again, this seems like a very far down the line where people are actually using Bolt 12 and it's not really there yet. But if we had Bolt 12, this would be and everyone using it, then it'd be so much better than it'd be ideal. Because basically the way it would work is that your client, when you click that button, it would, okay, maybe you would have like a custodial wallet in the app, but the way that I'm going to implement it, at least is that maybe it would just like it would just get the invoice directly off the Lightning Network with the client and do it that way. Or maybe you can use you could attach your node and your node would do that for you. So there's like a bunch of different ways of doing it. But yeah, it's not easy. If you want to do it right, it's not easy. That's kind of the main point.
Yeah, it seems like that would be the better way. I know when I think of like physical items, like actual physical world items, I think of like Bolt 12 and like what it could unleash. Like I've been playing with this idea of like creating a zine, and I've been like how am I going to do it? I want to I have all the art stuff and all that figured out. It's just, but like, how do I get the payment? If I want to charge 21 sats for that zine, how do I do that? And then the more and more I hear about Bolt 12, the more and more I get excited about this opportunity to create just a one address that can reach the masses.
Yeah. So there's been like a lot of negativity toward Bolt 12. They're saying it's, maybe it adds too much. Like a lot of people are complaining about the onion routing features and whatnot, but it does add a lot of useful stuff like these payer signatures. In theory, you could like simulate payer signatures, I think, with Bolt 11. So maybe I'll look into that, where you put like the pub key in the description or something. It's possible you might be able to do something like that, but you would need a custom LN URL set up to handle that. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think your instinct's telling you just to wait until you get that. That makes more sense. Yeah.
Because there's so much stuff to do in the meantime. Like I still need to build the Android client. I got to make all the clients suck less and like less buggy. So that's keeping me busy enough that like I feel like I could defer this. I know a lot of people, like a lot of the Bitcoiners love that, but I'm just trying to make an app that just doesn't suck. So,
yeah, absolutely. You just want to make it a good communication app, right? Like to talk to your friends and stuff in your community. It does that. It does that really well, I think, already, even with all the little, because I remember when you, like at the beginning of Nostr November, I was like, man, we really need images in this thing. And the fact that you were able to bang that out in 24 hours, I was like, damn, he got it out.
Oh yeah. You can actually, the inline images.
Yeah.
I really want to be able to post images. Something that should be pretty easy to do. I just haven't done it yet. So
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like I'm actually doing this just in my spare time. Like I do have a full-time job.
That's crazy, so, like, dude.
And I have insane. A kid, right? So like basically, I don't even know how I have time to do it. Actually, I think the way I would usually do is I wake up at 4 a.m. and just try to get as much done before my job starts. It's like,
wow, dude, that's insane. Gosh, dude. Well, man, thank you so much for doing it, man. Like, I know the sacrifice that it takes to do stuff for free for a really long time. I've been there and I've done that, and to a certain point, I'm still doing that. But like, dude, there's something. Thank you, just thank you for that, for creating this into the world and like giving it the care and attention that it needs, and really thinking through thoughtfully about it. So
yeah, it's very rare that I really focus this long on something, but I realize that it's actually really important, and I think it's our main shot. I think it's our best shot at this, because I played with Mastodon and ActivityPub for like years, and I had such I'm like, this can't possibly work, and I just feel like this can work, and it's just, and like, so it's just proving this, right? It's just proving it to people, like, look, this can work, and look, this is how it's going to work. And it's just, it's surprisingly there's not been that much negativity. Like sometimes there's like this one guy, CSU Wildcat, I think his name is, and he's just like, he's so against it, but like he's like the only person really been against it that I've talked to. So
no, I think yeah, your instinct seems to be in the right place. I would just keep listening to it, man. There's something to be said about like grassroots movements, and like this Nostr protocol, it has that. It's flush with that. It's light, man. It's really cool. I don't want to take up too much of your time, because I know we only booked for like an hour, but like, dude, I have one more question. For new developers like coming in, like that are fresh, that are going from like plebs to devs, like what kind of advice would you give those people that are listening right now, that are gonna, take on this, trying to be a developer in the Bitcoin space?
It's funny. Everyone always asks me this question, and I never have a good answer, just because like I've been programming for so long, and I first learned programming when I was like 10, and then
Wow.
so like I've forgotten how I've learned, and I feel like there's like really good ways to learn programming now. Like I was just playing with Replit the other day, and I'm like, this would be incredible if I had this when I was a kid. Like so like that is cool. The fact that we have that, and now we have Chat GPT, which can tell you how to write programs.
Oh
tell
yeah,
you what's
dude,
wrong with
so
the
sick.
program. So a combination, or even like there's like this ghostwriter feature in Replit where you just press tab and it'll like autocomplete your code for you, just like using AI. And I'm like, wow, there's just so many ways to learn. So I think, I don't know, maybe Replit. Go check that site out.
Check out Replit.
I don't know.
That's awesome. Dang. Well, dude, thanks for coming on the show, man. Like it's first, thank you again. Like, and then also like, man, I can't wait to see what it turns into. Something special there happening at Damus, man.
Yeah,
Keep it going.
It was great talk. It's great to meet you. Love your articles. Thanks for
thanks, dude.
spreading the word in Nostra.
Yeah, let's do it.